Hi, Adam Sweet here. Somebody asked in one of the Facebook groups about chords, and I thought I would do a quick 5-minute um, uh, demo video on how you make chords. So, um, chords are based on scales, and they're specifically the same notes out of each scale according to whatever the chord is. So for example, if you're asking for, say, a G major chord, then you're going to pick the specific notes out of the G major scale that make that chord. And those specific notes are going to be the first, third, fifth, and octave of the G major scale. So the first note of the G major scale obviously is G. The third note is B, and the fifth note is D, and then the octave is G again. So when you make a chord, what you want to do is try to include as many of those three notes, four including the octave, in the shape of the chord as you possibly can. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that you want to try to set up the chord in such a way so that it's easy to remember and easy to play. So those two things are how you make up a chord. Having said that, there are certain shapes of chords that are easier to remember than others. For example, this shape where you bar two notes with one finger and then you fret uh, the fourth and fifth octave with your second and third. So this is called the A shape and the D shape. It's also the A minor shape by moving your second finger back one, and the D minor shape by moving your second finger back one. It's also the A7 shape and the D7 shape. So that one shape um, gives you all of those different variations. So that's another thing to look for is specific shapes. All right, so let's do the 1-4-5 chord pattern for a bunch of keys. Let's start with G. So the 1-4-5 chord pattern for the key of G is G, C, and D, right? You know that from your bluegrass days. So G, C, and D. Let's do another one. Let's do D. So the one would be D, the 5 would be A, and the 4 would be B. Sorry, G. So D, B, G. Sorry, D, A, G. There we go. The 1-4-5 chord pattern for C would be C, and the 5 would be G, and the 4 would be F, right? So C, G, F. Okay, so what you got to do basically, I mean, this is the theory for all of this, and it works. All you need to know is what are all the notes of the scale, then what are the notes of the chord that you want to learn how to play. Most chords in bluegrass, Celtic, country, rock, early rock, are basically aligned with the chords that are typically used in Celtic music, and that has a historical reference. Um, Once jazz was introduced in the 1920s, then those genres took on some other types of chords, like 7 chords, 4 chords, 9 chords, and so on. And those numbers just indicate what additional notes are included in that chord. I'm not going to get into any of those chords, but just to say that, they were very common in the 1960s with bands like the Grateful Dead, um, David Grisman Quintet. Um, the Beatles certainly used a lot of those chords. Um, so all you got to do is you got to figure out the notes of each uh, scale, where you put your fingers, and then the 1, 3, 5, or the arpeggio for that scale will be the notes of the chord, and then the 1, 4, 5 chord pattern in that key. Now, somebody asked me the other day, what's the difference between the 1, 4, 5 and the 1, 3, 5? And I said, they're like apples and truck tires. They're completely different. So the 1, 3, 5 are the notes that make up the chord. They're the first, third, and fifth note of the scale, and they make up the chord, what's called a major triad, triad meaning three. And the 1, 4, 5 is a progression, meaning these are chords that you will play while you're singing a song or while somebody else is playing a melody. So the melody or the song goes over those chords or falls as those chords change. So they're completely different. And a lot of people get confused between the 1, 3, 5 of the chord and the 1, 4, 5 chord progression. So just keep those separate. They're completely independent of each other. All right, so I hope this was helpful. And as always, if you have questions, don't hesitate to visit me at my website, which is adamarsuite.net. The sweetmusicstudio.net link still will lead you to my website. And you can, from there, you can send me an email. I'm also all over Facebook, so if you want, you can send me a question through ASO Mandolin or ASO Fiddle. That's another page that I use frequently. All right, so hopefully this was helpful, and I'll see you online.